Good evening and welcome back. Pull your chair a little closer, wherever you are listening from, whatever corner of the world has swallowed you tonight. I want you to feel the warmth of this. If you have a fire nearby, good. If not, imagine one. The low crackle, the smell of something ancient burning, the way shadows on the wall do not quite hold still. Write to me and tell me where you are. Tell me if you are in a city apartment with the rain against the glass, or on a hillside with the stars doing what stars have always done, standing there, unblinking, waiting to be remembered. Tonight we go back. We go back to the very beginning of things, to a time before the word time meant what it means to you now, to a cosmology so vast and so ferociously alive that it makes every other creation story feel like a preliminary sketch. Tonight we speak of the Persians, of the Mazda Yasna, the old faith, of Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, of the fire that neither sleeps nor apologizes, of the long war, the oldest war, between light and everything that has ever tried to extinguish it. Settle in. This one takes a while, and it is worth every moment. Before anything was, there was time. Not the time you know, not the counted, subdivided, calendrical kind. Not the time that presses against your chest when a deadline approaches or a loved one is late returning home. This was Zurvan, boundless, self-generated, the only presence in the absolute dark that had no edges and therefore could not be called dark, because darkness requires the memory of light, and there was no such memory yet. Zurvan simply was. In some of the older recensions, and I want to be clear that what we are dealing with here is a tradition that fractured and reformed across 2 millennia, so some say is going to be doing real work tonight. In some of the older accounts, Zurvan predates even the gods. Zurvan is the field in which divinity eventually becomes possible, a container for everything, including contradiction, including war. The mainstream Zoroastrian account does not begin with Zurvan. It begins with Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, the lord of light, existing in infinite brilliance, surrounded by the good mind and by righteousness, dwelling in what the Avestan texts call the endless lights, a realm without shadow, without weight, without the specific gravity of suffering. This is the primordial heaven, and already, in the very architecture of this beginning, you can feel the structure of what is coming, because for Ahura Mazda to be light, there must be, somewhere, a concept of its opposite, not yet a presence, not yet a god, but a logical necessity, hovering at the edge of things, like the word you cannot quite remember. Ahura Mazda sees. This is the crucial first act. He sees, with whatever faculty a being of pure light uses to perceive, the future. He sees the entire arc of cosmic history, the creation, the assault, the long war, the ultimate purification. He sees it all, and he chooses to proceed anyway. This is not a god caught off guard. This is a god who walks into catastrophe with full knowledge and full intention, which makes the Persian cosmological tradition one of the most philosophically serious origin stories in the ancient world. There is no naivety in Ahura Mazda. There is something harder and stranger, a willingness to allow suffering in the service of a final good, so vast it cannot be explained to anyone who has not yet arrived at it. Below the endless lights, if below means anything in a realm without geography, there existed the endless darkness. This was the domain of Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit, the one who would be named Ahriman in later Persian tradition. And here the traditions diverge sharply. The Gathas, the oldest hymns attributed to the prophet Zarathustra himself, speak of two primal spirits who were twins, not exactly brothers, but emanations, two choices made at the very beginning of things. One chose truth, one chose the lie. The division was not imposed from outside, it was chosen. This is the Zoroastrian answer to theodicy. Evil is not a mistake, and it is not something that God failed to prevent. Evil is a choosing, and the entire universe is organized around that choosing and its ultimate correction. The Zandic tradition and some of the later Pahlavi texts give us the Zurvanite modification of this story, and it is a darker and more troubling vision. In the Zurvanite account, Zurvan, infinite time, performs 1,000 years of sacrifice to gain a son. Ahura Mazda is the intended son, perfect, luminous, the answer to all longing. But Zurvan experiences a moment of doubt. One moment in 1,000 years. And doubt, in this cosmology, is generative. It births something. Angra Mainyu is born from that doubt. The twins enter the world simultaneously, and the rule of Zurvan is that whichever one arrives first shall be given sovereignty over creation. Angra Mainyu rips through the womb of time and arrives first. He is given sovereignty, and creation, from the very first instant of its existence, is a contested inheritance. I find this version harder to think about, honestly. The Zurvanite myth makes evil not just a choice, but a structural feature of existence, the shadow that falls from a moment of doubt, which means that doubt itself is the original sin, not pride, not disobedience, but the simple human, divine moment of wondering whether the sacrifice is worth it. Maybe that is why the Zoroastrian orthodoxy eventually suppressed the Zurvanite account. It was too honest. It got too close to something. The Mazdian Orthodox cosmology gives us a more clearly drawn battle. Ahura Mazda creates the spiritual world first. The Menok, the invisible, the ideal, forms without matter, the Platonic realm before Plato had the vocabulary for it. He creates the 6 Amesha Spentas, the bounteous immortals, emanations of his own divine nature, Vohu Mana, the good mind, Asha Vahishta, best truth, Shatra Vairya, desirable dominion, Spenta Armaiti, holy devotion, Haur Valatat, wholeness, Ameritat, immortality. Each of these is simultaneously a divine being and a cosmic principle, simultaneously a person you could in some sense address and a law of the universe you could not argue with. They are the armature around which creation is shaped. Then comes the Getig, the material world, the world of solid things and bleeding things and things that can be lost. Ahura Mazda creates in sequence, sky, then water, then earth, then plants, then the primordial animal, the uniquely created bull, then the first human. Each creation is perfect in its monog form. Each becomes more vulnerable as it descends into matter. This is not pessimism about the physical world. The Avestan tradition is notably warm toward the body, toward physical pleasure taken righteously, toward the earth itself as sacred. But there is an acknowledgement that matter is the zone of contestation, the front line, the place where the war will be fought. The spiritual world is secure. The material world is the battlefield. Angra Mainyu rushes at this creation like a wave against a shore. He bursts through the base of the sky and into the waters and into the earth, polluting everything he touches. He creates his own counter-army, the devas, the demons, each one a perversion of a divine principle. Where Ahura Mazda places the good mind, Angra Mainyu raises Akem Mana, the evil mind. Where there is truth, he sets the lie. The Druge, which is the most important word in this entire cosmology, the name for everything that is false and violent and consuming. Where there is wholeness, he places disease. Where there is immortality, he places death. The bull, that first, perfect, uniquely created animal, is killed by Angra Mainyu's assault. From its death, from its spilled seed caught and purified by the moon, come all the animals of the world. The first human, Gayomad, is also assaulted and killed. From his dying seed, purified in the earth for 40 years, grow the first human couple, Marcia and Marciana, a rhubarb plant that separates into two figures. The assault on creation generates creation. This is the great Zoroastrian paradox. Angra Mainyu tries to destroy and instead diversifies. He tries to end and instead generates. He does not understand that Ahura Mazda already accounted for this. He never will. The shape of the cosmos at this point is a sphere. The sky, a hard shell of stone. The waters circling within it. The earth floating on the waters. The mountain, Hara Berizaiti, rising from the earth's center to pierce the sky. Through this mountain passes the sun's path. Around this mountain circle the stars, and the stars are Ahura Mazda's army, each one a fire, each one a point of vigilance in the long darkness. Angra Mainyu cannot abide this geometry. Order offends him the way truth offends a lie, structurally, necessarily. This is the condition of the universe at the opening of the great time. 9,000 years, some say 12,000, the cosmic span within which the battle will resolve. The first 3,000 years belong to the purely spiritual realm, contested but not yet fully embodied. The middle 3,000 years, our time, human time, the time of history and memory, and all the myths we are about to tell, are the time of mixed creation, gumization, the time of mingling, when light and darkness are so thoroughly entangled that every human life is a theater of war. The last 3,000 years will be the time of separation, wizarition, the slow disentanglement, the final purification, and then frashokareti, the renovation of the world. Every soul returned to the body, every metal melted out of the mountains in a river of molten fire that will feel to the righteous like warm milk and will purify even the most polluted soul. Creation restored, the lie ended, Angra Mainyu himself finally obliterated or imprisoned. Accounts differ, and the universe returned to what it was always supposed to be. This is the frame within which everything else happens. Keep it in mind. Every hero, every war, every moment of courage or betrayal we encounter tonight is happening inside this cosmic drama, and every one of them, every single one, matters. Because in a universe where the choice between truth and the lie is the central fact of existence, no individual choice is small. The age that concerns us most is the second, the age of kings, of dynasties rising and collapsing, of the divine spark being carried forward through generations of mortals who are both magnificent and compromised. But before we can speak of those kings, we must speak of the forces arrayed against them, and we must establish the order, fragile, contested, always slightly on the edge of dissolution, that those kings inherit and must defend. Ahura Mazda does not rule the material world directly. This is important. He rules the spiritual world with perfect sovereignty, but the material world he governs through intermediaries and through the agency of human choice. He sends his Yazatas, the divine beings worthy of worship, Mithra, guardian of covenants, Anahita, lady of the waters, Tishtria, the rain star who fights the demon of drought, Sreosha, divine obedience, the one who hears and is heard. These are his emissaries, his instruments, his arguments made real and walking in the world. Against each of them, Angra Mainyu deploys a daiva, a counter-argument, a perversion. Mithra protects contracts. Angra Mainyu's forces work to dissolve every agreement ever made. Anahita sustains life through water. The Upper Osha demon works to end rainfall, to crack the earth and dry the rivers, and starve every living thing. The war is not fought between armies of gods meeting on a plain. The war is fought in every transaction, every marriage, every harvest, every moment when a mortal being chooses whether to speak true or to lie, whether to keep a promise or to break it. This is the radical democratization of sacred conflict that Zoroastrianism offers. You are not an audience member, you are a combatant. Your daily choices are the battle. But there are those whose choices matter more. There are those on whom larger forces converge, figures shaped by fate or prophecy or the particular pressure of divine attention. The kings of ancient Iran, the legendary kings who precede the historical Achaemenids and Parthians in the mythology, are such figures. Their stories are preserved in the Avesta, in the Pahlavi books, and most brilliantly in Ferdowsi's Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, which gathered these legends in the 10th century CE and gave them a literary form so powerful that they have never recovered from it, which is to say, they have never been the same since, which is to say, they are now inseparable from Ferdowsi's particular genius. The first legendary dynasty is the Pishtadian, the earliest givers, the first lawgivers. At their head stands Keyumars, who is both the first man and the first king, who some texts identify with the primordial Geomard. His reign begins in luminous simplicity. He wears animal skins and teaches his people to do the same. He is radiant. He has the royal glory, the Fa, the Kvarana, which is the divine effulgence that marks a legitimate ruler, a fire around the form visible to those who know how to see. His son Siamak is killed by the demon Angra Mainyu in the world's first act of violence, and this killing, this first death of a prince, of an heir, establishes the pattern that will repeat across all the generations we are about to examine. The good son dies. The divine light is threatened at the moment of succession. The grief of the father, which Keumars experiences as something the texts describe as turning the world dark, is the first grief, and it contains within it every subsequent grief. He weeps for a year, he refuses to govern, and then he remembers what he is and what the war requires, and he rises. Hushang follows, and it is Hushang who discovers fire. Not in the way Prometheus discovers fire, not as theft, not as transgression, but as recognition. He sees a great serpent and hurls a stone at it. The stone misses the serpent and strikes another stone, and sparks fly, and the dry grass catches, and Hushang understands, in a single blinding moment, what he is looking at. He builds a fire. He gathers his people around it. He says, "This light is the light of the divine. Worship it." And this is the origin of the sacred fire, which burns in the fire temples to this very day, not as superstition, not as mere symbol, but as the presence of Ahura Mazda in the material world, the one thing that Angra Mainyu's pollution cannot touch, the one thing that always points upward. Tamuras comes after, and it is Tamuras who binds the demons. He seizes Angra Mainyu himself and rides him like a horse across the face of the world for 30 years. The demons, in exchange for their freedom, teach him writing. This is not a minor detail. In the Zoroastrian understanding, writing is a gift extracted from evil, which means that knowledge, the recording of knowledge, the preservation of truth across time, costs something. It required confrontation with darkness. The king who can ride the darkness, who can use it without being used by it, who can extract wisdom from the encounter and then release the demon and survive. This is the kind of king the world requires. Then comes Jamshid, and here the story slows, because Jamshid deserves the slowing. He is the greatest of the Pishtadian kings, the zenith of the First Age. The texts lavish on him a tenderness that they give to almost no other figure in the early mythology. He is the one for whom the world was most fully what the world was supposed to be. His reign is everything the Frashokareti promises, that final renovation of the world, the return to paradise, except happening early, inside history, as a gift and as a warning and as a thing that will be taken away. Jamshid is born into radiance. The Kvarina clings to him like a second skin, so bright that it is difficult to describe him directly, and this is one of those moments where I want to be honest with you, as a narrator, that the texts themselves seem to strain at the edges of what language can do. They accumulate images. He is like the sun. He is like fire. He is like the first morning when the world was still astonished at its own existence. He rules for 300 years, then another 300, then 300 more. His millennium is the closest thing in the old mythology to the Golden Age, that category of time that appears in every culture's mythology where everything was, briefly, right. Under Jamshid, there is no disease, there is no hunger, there is no aging, or aging proceeds so slowly that it amounts to the same thing. He teaches his people every art that matters, the working of iron, the weaving of linen and silk, the building of ships, the use of perfume, the organization of social classes, warrior and priest and farmer and artisan, each given dignity, each given purpose, each fitting into the whole as a stone fits into an arch, which is to say the arch would collapse without any one of them. He digs the foundations of civilization with a jeweled ring. He has a cup, the Jam-e-Jam, in which the entire world is visible, past and future and present all at once, all the wars and all the harvests, all the births and all the deaths that have not yet happened. He looks into it and knows everything. And then the hubris comes not as a single dramatic moment, but as an accumulation. Pride grows inside Jamshid the way rust grows inside iron, slowly, quietly, at first invisible, then suddenly everywhere. He calls his nobles to court, and he says to them, "Look at what I have made. Look at all of this. Is there any other power in the world like mine? Acknowledge it." The nobles acknowledge it, because nobles generally do what kings ask them to do. And Jamshid, having been acknowledged, begins to believe that he is the source of his own light. He forgets, and this forgetting is the primal human error in the Zoroastrian tradition. He forgets that the Kvarina is given, not earned. He forgets that the light belongs to Ahura Mazda and passes through him, that he is a vessel, not a flame. The moment he forgets this, the Kvarina leaves him. The ancient texts describe it as a bird, a great bird of paradise, sometimes identified as the mythological Simurgh, though the traditions tangle here, rising from Jamshid's shoulders and flying away. And Jamshid, the most brilliant king in the history of the world, is left standing in his magnificent palace, still wearing his crown, still surrounded by his 1,000 years of achievement, and entirely, catastrophically ordinary. The light has departed. What follows is fast and terrible. An Arab king named Zahak, or Zuhak, or Mardas, names shifting as the tradition moves between languages, rises, and he has a darkness about him from the beginning. Angra Mainyu himself approaches Zahak in disguise, and through a series of escalating corruptions, first a whispered counsel, then a kiss upon each shoulder, plants 2 black serpents that grow from Zahak's body. They cannot be removed. They require feeding. They eat human brains. Every night, 2 young men must be killed to provide the serpents their meal, and Zahak's court becomes a machine for the regular destruction of the young, which is to say the future, which is to say hope. He hunts Jamshid to the ends of the world and kills him with a saw. And the Shahnameh gives this death in a single stark line that I will not quote but will describe. It is hideous, and it is deliberate, and it is meant to be the final erasure, and yet it is not, because Jamshid had daughters, and his daughters survive, and his blood continues, and the Khavarana is not so easily extinguished. It passes on, it waits. The reign of Zahak lasts 1,000 years. 1,000 years of the serpents, 1,000 years of young men dying. The myth offers us this duration, not because it is literally historical, but because it needs to make you feel the weight of what sustained oppression does to a world. It becomes normal. It becomes the only reality that anyone alive can remember. Zahak is monstrous, but monstrousness over a sufficient period of time begins to look like nature. The parents who bring their sons to the court, the priests who find theological justifications, the nobles who continue to feast. They are not villains in the ordinary sense. They are people who have stopped being able to imagine that things could be otherwise. Into this 1,000-year nightmare, Feridun is born. Feridun, this is where I want to dwell, because Feridun is the first fully realized hero of the Persian mythological tradition, and his story contains almost everything the tradition knows about what heroism actually costs. His father is killed by Zahak's agents before he is born. His mother, Faranak, flees with her infant son and hides him with a farmer named Purushab, who owns a miraculous cow, the Barmaya, whose milk feeds the child through his earliest years. The cow is a gift and also a risk. When Zahak's men eventually come looking, they kill the cow and the farmer, and Faranak must flee again, carrying the child into the mountain fastness where the great king Simurgh, who in this version is not a bird but a wise hermit. The traditions are genuinely mixed here, and I am not certain this inconsistency matters, or whether the mixing is itself the point, where the wise one of the mountain takes the boy in and raises him in secret. There is a prophecy, naturally. There is always a prophecy. Zahak knows that a child will be born who will end his rule, and so he kills and kills, looking for the one he cannot find, and the killing radiates outward from the court and destroys ordinary families and ordinary lives in its search for the one particular threat. This is the geometry of tyranny. It harms the many in its attempt to destroy the one, and in so doing, it generates the very resentment that will eventually produce the one. Feridun grows in the mountain. He grows strong and serious, and he has his mother's courage and his father's blood, and something additional, the Kvarana, which found him, which always finds its true vessel. When he is 16, he descends from the mountain and finds a world that has been suffering for longer than he has been alive, and that has, almost despite itself, held on to something, a blacksmith named Kaveh. And this is one of the great moments in the entire tradition, so I want to give it room. Kaveh, the blacksmith, comes to Zahak's court. His sons have been taken. His sons are being killed to feed the serpents. And Kaveh, who is not a king, and not a warrior, and not a prophet, walks into the court of the monster and speaks. He raises his leather apron, his working apron, the apron of a craftsman, the humblest piece of fabric imaginable, and he speaks truth in front of the lie incarnate. He says, "You have taken my sons, and this is wrong. It is wrong." The court trembles. Zahak, perhaps startled by a directness he has not encountered in centuries, releases the sons. Kaveh walks out of the court with his sons, and with his apron, and with the document that Zahak's nobles had signed, attesting to the king's legitimacy and justice, and he tears that document apart in the street. He raises his leather apron on a pole, and people follow it, because they needed something to follow, and it turned out that what they needed was not a god or a king, but a craftsman who refused to pretend. Kaveh's apron becomes the Derafsh Kaviani, the imperial standard of Iran, the battle flag carried across the centuries, encrusted eventually with jewels and gold, the most sacred object in the Persian military tradition. It starts as a craftsman's apron. This is not a small thing. The Persian tradition is telling you something about where legitimacy actually comes from, not from the court, not from the document the nobles sign, not from the serpents that grow from power's shoulders and demand to be fed, but from the craftsman who stands in the street and tears the lie in half. Fereydun meets Kaveh and receives the standard. He advances on Zahak with an army that grows as it moves, because 1,000 years of suppressed fury is a very large resource once it has a direction. He reaches the court. He fights through Zahak's defenders with a mace that he has fashioned in the shape of a cow's head, a tribute to the Barmaya who fed him, a debt paid in iron, and he strikes Zahak down. He does not kill him. Somehow he does not kill him, and the texts never fully explain this. Some say the angel Zoroaster speaks to him at the moment of killing and tells him not to spill Zahak's blood on earth, lest it generate more demons. Some say he simply cannot. Either way, he chains Zahak deep inside the volcanic mountain of Damavand, the great mountain, the one you can see from Tehran on clear days, the one that still stands, and seals him there. Zahak is not dead. He is imprisoned. He will remain imprisoned until the end of time, when he will break free for one final devastation before being slain at last. This knowledge that the evil is contained but not destroyed is built into the myth like a structural crack in a beautiful building. The victory is real, and the victory is not final. Both things are true at once. Fereydun reigns for 500 years. He has 3 sons, Salm, Tur, and Iraj. He divides the world between them. Salm takes the west, Tur takes the middle, Iraj, the youngest and the most beloved, takes Iran, the sacred center. This is a mistake, not because the division is wrong. Fereydun has thought about this carefully, but because Salm and Tur want Iran. They want the center. They want what Iraj has, and they hate him for being loved. Iraj, when he hears that his brothers are coming to war against him, does something extraordinary. He sends away his army. He rides to meet his brothers alone, and he offers them everything. He says, "Take Iran. Take all of it. I want nothing but peace between us." He is so genuine, so entirely unburdened by the hunger for position that destroys other men, that Salm and Tur are briefly paralyzed. They stand in front of their younger brother's generosity, and they cannot bear it. It is easier to kill him than to be improved by him. Tur strikes him down with his crown. Psalm watches. They send Iraj's severed head back to their father. Feridun's grief at the death of Iraj is, I am going to pause here, because this is one of the moments in the tradition that hits differently from everything around it, and I am not entirely sure why I want to linger on it. It might be because Iraj is the purest figure in the entire mythology, and his death is the purest expression of what the tradition is saying about purity. It does not survive contact with the world. His goodness is real. His goodness is also insufficient. The world contains Psalm and Tur, and goodness without strategic capacity is simply the next thing to be destroyed. Feridun weeps for Iraj, the way Keyumars wept for Siamak. The great kings weep. The tradition does not ask them not to, but the tradition does require, eventually, an heir. The line must continue. The Kvarina must be carried forward. And from Iraj's line comes Manichaeism, who is raised for revenge, raised from infancy to be the instrument of a dead man's justice. He grows and goes to war and kills Psalm and Tur and returns their heads to the aged Feridun, who dies shortly after. The circle closes. The iambic rhythm of Persian heroic mythology establishes itself here for the first time in its full form. Grief, patience, the growing of an avenger, war, return, grief again. Let me collect the thread. We have moved from creation through the first dynasty, through the long catastrophe of Zahak, through the liberation under Feridun, and into the cycle of succession and betrayal that will define the next 1,000 years of legendary history. The structure I want you to keep in mind is this. Each great king receives the Kvarina, achieves wonders, and then loses the divine light through either hubris or violence, or the failure of his heirs. The evil is always lurking. The world is never safe. The goodness is never permanent. And yet, the light does not go out. It transfers. It finds another vessel. It insists on continuing. This insistence is the argument of the entire tradition. Angra Mainyu's greatest error is his confidence. He believes that if he can extinguish the light in any given generation, he is winning. He does not understand that the light was never located in the person. It was always located in the commitment to truth, which is not a biological inheritance, but a spiritual one. And spiritual inheritances can cross any gap, find any vessel, survive any catastrophe. The Kayanian dynasty follows the Pishdadians, and it is the Kayanians who give us the most elaborate and most emotionally devastating heroic tradition in Persian mythology. It is also the dynasty that produces Siavash, and Siavash deserves everything I am about to give him. But before Siavash, we need Kavus. Kavus is not a good king. I want to be clear about this, because the tradition is not sentimental about its rulers. He is the second Kayanian king. He has the Khvarena. He has genuine power, and he is also vain and impulsive and repeatedly tricked into disasters that better judgment would have avoided. He attacks the kingdom of Mazandaran, where demons have obscured the sun, and he is blinded along with his army by the great demon Div-A-Sepid, the white demon, and left helpless until his greatest champion rescues him. He is tricked by a div into building a flying machine from eagles and attempting to reach heaven. He attacks his allies through misunderstanding. He is a lesson in how the divine favor can rest on a man who is genuinely insufficient for it, and what that costs everyone around him. He has, however, one quality that redeems him in the tradition's accounting. He fathers Siavash, and perhaps that is enough. Siavash is born of Kavus and a princess from the demon realm, which in the Persian tradition does not make him demonic. It makes him liminal, a figure who belongs fully to neither world, and who therefore sees both more clearly than anyone entirely inside one world can. He is raised away from his father's court, given to the hero Rostam, who takes him to Sistan and raises him in the open country, teaching him everything that can be taught: horsemanship, archery, the governance of his own temper, the reading of the sky. He is beautiful. This needs saying, because the Persian texts say it repeatedly and mean it in a specific way. His beauty is not vanity's gift, but truth's signature on a face. He rides into his father's court at the appointed time, and the court goes quiet. Even the horses seem to understand that something different has arrived. Kavus's wife, Sudabe, falls in love with Siavash, or something that calls itself love. The tradition is careful about this, uses language that carries enough ambiguity to make you uncertain whether what Sudabe experiences is love, or is the need for possession, or is the particular cruelty that beautiful things sometimes attract from those who cannot bear that beauty should belong to itself. She approaches him. He refuses her. She approaches again. He refuses again. And each refusal is delivered with perfect courtesy and genuine sorrow, because Siavash is not cold. He sees her clearly and feels pity for her, and he cannot help her, and he will not help himself to her. When straightforward seduction fails, Sudabe accuses him. She goes to Kavus and says, "Your son attempted to violate me." This is the lie that the tradition has been building toward, since it named the Druj the greatest evil in the universe. This is the lie in its most intimate and devastating form. A lie that a father might believe because a father wants to believe his wife, because doubt is harder than certainty, because the alternative, knowing his wife has lied, knowing his son's goodness is real, is more painful than the anger. The ordeal by fire. Kavus cannot simply execute his son and cannot simply believe his wife, so he orders Siavash to ride through a great fire, a burning mountain of wood, tall as the sky, and the fire, which is the presence of Ahura Mazda in the material world, will judge. And Siavash rides into the fire. He rides through it. He emerges on the other side without a mark. His white horse is untouched. His white robes are untouched. The fire has looked at him and found nothing to burn. This should be the end of it. In a just world, this would be the end of it. But the world is not just. The myth is entirely honest about this, and Sudabe continues her campaign, and the court continues to be a place of suspicion, and Siavash understands that he cannot live in his father's kingdom without this following him. He asks Kavus to send him on a military campaign. He needs to be useful. He needs to be somewhere that his virtue can function as a virtue rather than as a provocation. He is sent to fight against Afrasiab, the great king of Turan, who is Iran's ancient enemy, the power from beyond the northern borderlands, the one against whom all Persian kings have eventually had to stand. And here the story turns in a direction that I did not expect the first time I encountered it, and that I think is the most genuinely surprising movement in the entire tradition. Siavash negotiates a peace. He meets the Turanian ambassadors and he believes them. Not naively, he is not naive, but because he looks at what is being offered and he thinks, if this peace is real, it saves more lives than the war. And peace is what truth desires. Angra Mainyu is the spirit of violence and destruction. Choosing peace, even imperfect peace, even peace that requires trust, is itself a spiritual act. Kavus refuses the peace. He orders Siavash to execute the Turanian hostages. Siavash refuses. He cannot execute men who came to him under promise of safety. He will not. This is the line. He has crossed every other line for his father's sake. He submitted to the trial by fire. He accepted the campaign. He has been dutiful and excellent and obedient in everything, but he will not kill men who came to him in good faith. He rides north. He crosses the border into Turan. He presents himself to Afrasiab and asks for asylum. And Afrasiab, and this is perhaps the most psychologically complicated moment in the whole narrative, Afrasiab receives him. He has been told by his own seers that sheltering Siavash will lead to his dynasty's destruction. He knows this. He receives him anyway, because there is something in Siavash's arrival that overrides political calculation. Some texts say he loves Siavash like a son the moment he sees him. Some say he is simply moved, against his own interests, by obvious goodness. Either way, he shelters him. Siavash builds a city in Turan, Siavashgird, the city of Siavash, and marries Afrasiab's daughter, Ferengis. He is safe. He has built something. He has made peace real by living inside it. There are a few years. The texts are vague about the duration, but there are years when it actually works. Afrasiab's brother Garsivas is the instrument of destruction. He works on Afrasiab, slowly, with the patience of someone who understands that jealousy, once planted, grows without watering. He suggests, carefully, obliquely, repeatedly, that Siavash is building power, that Siavash is beloved by the Turanian people in ways that might eventually threaten Afrasiab's own throne, that Siavash might be in correspondence with Iran. These suggestions are not true. They are not meant to be true. They are meant to accumulate until truth becomes irrelevant. Afrasiab calls Siavash to him. The texts give us a scene where Siavash arrives before his protector and is met with cold eyes, and he understands immediately what has happened. He has lived his whole life among people who have been turned against him by lies. He recognizes the shape of it. He is executed on Afrasiab's orders. The texts describe his blood falling to the ground, and from the blood growing a plant. Some say the herb that becomes a symbol of mourning, some say a poppy, some say simply a plant of vivid red, which is the earth's testimony to what was lost. His wife, Pharangis, escapes, pregnant with his child. That child is Khosrow, and Khosrow is the vessel into which all the tragedy of Siavash is poured and refined into purpose. Khosrow grows up in obscurity in Turan, guarded by his mother, knowing his father's fate, knowing his father's virtue. He is found eventually by the hero Give, who spends 7 years searching for him. 7 years crossing deserts and fighting through Turan, sustained by nothing but the knowledge that somewhere a child exists who carries Siavash's blood and Pharangis's courage and the Kavarena that has not yet found its proper vessel. Give is a hero the tradition does not spend enough time on, which I realize is a choice and not an accident. There are figures in every mythological tradition who are essential and undersung, whose faithfulness does the work that glory later takes credit for. Give is one of those figures. Khosrow comes to Iran. He takes the throne. He assembles the heroes of the tradition: Rostam, Give, Gudards, Tus, Bijan, in a campaign against Turan that is simultaneously a war of political legitimacy and a personal crusade for his father's death. He fights Afrasiab across the breadth of the world. He drives him into hiding. He pursues him to the shores of a great lake where a holy man has sheltered him. He kills him. And then Khosrow does something that no other king in the tradition does. He stops. He has won. He has everything. He has avenged Siavash. He has defeated Turan. He has the Kvarena in its fullest brightness, and he is at the peak of his power. And he announces that he is leaving. He will walk into the mountains and disappear. He is seen with the clarity that his father had, and that is perhaps what the Kvarena really means in its deepest form. He has seen that power corrupts, that time inside the world eventually produces hubris, and that it is better to go before the going is forced on you by your own diminishment. He goes into the mountains in winter with a small group of heroes. He tells them to turn back before they are caught in the storm. Some turn back, some follow. Those who follow, Tas and Gudars and Bijan and Faribors, are swallowed by the snow, never found. Khosrow himself simply disappears. No death, no burial, no body. He is last seen walking toward the white of the blizzard, and the white takes him. He is said to return at the end of time, at Frashokareti, as one of the 3 messengers who will herald the renovation of the world. He is the only king in the tradition who reads the story he is inside clearly enough to choose his own ending, and the tradition mourns him for this, which is a strange kind of mourning. Grief for someone who made the right choice, grief for the rightness itself, grief that the world could not hold what he was. Now we arrive at Rostam, and Rostam is not like the others. Every figure so far has been, ultimately, part of the divine drama, a vessel for the Kvarena, a player in the war between Asha and Druj. Rostam is something different. Rostam is the hero who exists outside the divine schema. He is not particularly holy. He drinks too much. He makes mistakes from stubbornness. He is enormously, almost scandalously human, and this is why he is the most beloved figure in the entire tradition, why his name has survived where the names of more pious heroes have faded, why Ferdowsi clearly loves him in a way he loves almost no other figure. He is born with difficulty. His mother Rudabeh labors for days and nearly dies. The great Simurgh, the divine bird who nests on the tree of knowledge, and who will appear and reappear across the entire tradition as the carrier of wisdom that exists outside human systems. The Simurgh sends its feather with instructions for a caesarean birth. The feather is burned, the smoke called upward. The Simurgh descends and teaches Rudabeh's attendants what to do. Rostam is pulled from his mother, and he is enormous and already laughing, which the texts note as remarkable, that the first thing this child does in the world is laugh. He kills his first elephant at the age of 8. He kills the white elephant when it breaks loose in his grandfather's court, kills it with his grandfather's mace while his grandfather sleeps, alone, in the night. A child who hears the commotion and decides to handle it himself. This will be his mode for the next several centuries, alone, at night, handling things. His horse is Raksh, the dazzle, the lightning, found on the plains and chosen by Rostam in a trial of strength that eliminates every other horse in the kingdom. He presses his hand down on each horse's back until the horse's belly touches the ground. Raksh does not move. They are matched. They will travel together for a lifetime, and when Raksh eventually dies, it will be as part of the trap that kills Rostam. And the connection between them, the fact that the greatest hero in the tradition and his horse go down together, is the tradition's acknowledgement that the hero and the vehicle of the hero are one thing. The 7 labors. Rostam and Raksh travel through hostile territory on a mission to rescue Kay Kavus. This is after the fiasco in Mazandaran, and they face 7 trials: a lion, a waterless desert, a dragon, a sorceress, a demon, a warrior, and finally the great Div Aulad, who once defeated, becomes Rostam's guide. The labors are explicitly modeled on heroic trial traditions, and the pattern is familiar. Each trial reveals a different aspect of Rostam's virtue: his courage in the lion trial, his self-reliance when Raksh kills the dragon without waking him and he has to reconstruct what happened, his discernment with the sorceress, his strength with the demon. The trials are not just tests of physical power, but tests of the capacity to read the world correctly, to trust the right things, to distrust the right things. He fights his son without knowing it. This is the story of Sohrab, a son born to a woman Rostam loved and left not from cruelty, but from necessity, in the way that heroes of this tradition are always leaving, always bound to the next campaign, always failing their private lives in service of their public ones. The woman sends a message claiming the child is a daughter, afraid that the knowledge of a son will draw Rostam back and endanger the child. Sohrab grows up knowing he has a famous father and not knowing his name. He comes to Iran looking for him. Rostam meets him across a battle line. The combat is 3 days long. 3 days of two people who are matched not just in skill, but in the specific quality of their spirit, the specific brightness of their courage. On the third day, Rostam kills Sohrab, and as Sohrab lies dying, he says, "My father is Rostam. If Rostam knew I was here, he would have," and Rostam knows. He knows immediately. He pulls from his dying son's arm the bracelet that he himself gave to the boy's mother years ago, and the knowledge arrives. He cannot undo it. He tries every remedy, sends for the king's antidote, but the antidote comes too late, and Sohrab dies. Rostam mourns him with a howl that the Shahnameh describes in terms that I will not reproduce, terms that make the grief physical, make it a geological event, make the earth respond. He buries his son, and he carries the weight of this for the rest of his life, which is a very long life, and the weight does not diminish with time. It simply becomes part of him. He remains Rostam. He remains enormous and capable and essential, and he carries his son inside him like a stone in the chest. He fights Esfandiar. This is the last great story of Rostam's life, and it is, if anything, more devastating than the story of Sohrab, because at least with Sohrab, the tragedy is unknowing. The tragedy of Esfandiar is fully known by both parties before the first blow. Esfandiar is the son of the Kayanian king Goshtasp, a hero in his own right. He has completed his own set of 7 labors. He has the divine protection that makes him nearly invincible. He is righteous and loyal and powerful. He is sent to bring Rostam to court in chains, on the orders of a king who is jealous of Rostam's fame and who has manipulated Esfandiar into carrying out this humiliation. Esfandiar knows it is a humiliation. He knows Rostam deserves no chains. He goes anyway, because a prince's duty to his king is the framework within which he exists, and to abandon it would be to abandon himself. Rostam will not come in chains. He offers every other form of submission. He will come, he will bow, he will stand before the king, but not in chains. His honor is not a personal vanity. It is the form his service takes. To come in chains would be to say that he has no integrity, only obedience, and integrity is the point of everything he has ever done. They fight. They fight for 2 days, and on the second day, Rostam is losing. He is old. He is genuinely old. The first time in the tradition that we see Rostam's age as a real limitation. He escapes by pretending to break for negotiations and returns to the Simurgh, the great bird, the teacher, the one who has been present since his birth, who tells him the only way to kill Esfandiar, through his eyes, the one vulnerability, the one place he can be reached. Rostam returns to the third day of combat, knowing he is going to kill a good man, to preserve his own honor, and knowing that the killing will bring a curse on his line, and knowing that Esfandiar knows all of this and is there anyway because they have both been placed in an impossible position by a bad king. He fires the arrow. Esfandiar dies. Before he dies, he says, I know it is not your fault. I know it is not mine. The tradition mourns them both. Rostam dies shortly after, in a trap set by his half-brother Shagad, who has nursed a jealousy for years and who manipulates Rostam into hunting in a forest filled with concealed pits. Rostam falls. Raksh falls. Rostam, dying in the pit, still has enough strength to shoot Shagad through the tree where Shagad is hiding, pinning him there. It is the last shot. It is the right shot. And then Rostam is gone. The tradition does not seem to quite believe this. Later texts float suggestions that he survived, that the accounts are wrong, that he is somewhere still. But the Shahnameh does not hedge. He dies in a pit in the ground, killed by a brother he never had reason to trust, and trusted anyway. And the world after Rostam is measurably smaller than the world that contained him. Anyway, the world has been filling with these losses. Each hero falls, and what falls with him is not just a life, but a mode of engagement with existence, a specific way of being large in the world that the world cannot produce again from the same materials. Siavash's mode was purity under pressure. K. Khosrow's mode was clarity in the face of power. Rostam's mode was the sheer refusal to be diminished by what diminished him. These modes do not recur. Other heroes come, and they are genuine, and they are brave, and they are not the same. The great collective event, the war between Iran and Turan, is not a single battle, but a civilizational epoch, the Persian mythology's equivalent of the Trojan War, except spread across generations and never fully resolved until K. Khosrow's campaign. It is the frame within which the individual heroic stories take their meaning. Without the war with Turan, there is no Siavash. He goes to Afrasiab to escape the lie at his father's court and is killed there, and his death becomes the primary wound that the war reopens every generation. Without the war with Turan, there is no Rostam in half his roles. He is the rescuer of kings from Turanian and demonic threats, the weapon that Iran reaches for when ordinary weapons fail. But the war with Turan is also the tradition's way of working out something more complex than good versus evil. Afrasiab is not Angramenu. He is a king who makes bad choices, who kills a man he loved because he listened to his brother's jealousy, who pursues a political interest with methods that are catastrophic. He has genuine love in him. His grief at Siavash's death, which comes later, is described as real, and this love does not prevent the atrocity. The war between Iran and Turan is the war between order and chaos, between the covenant-keeping south and the restless north, between settled civilization and the steppe, but it is also just the war between people who could have found another way and did not. The tradition does not pretend this is simple. The heroes of Iran's side are imperfect in every direction. K. Kavus, the king who has the Kvarana and squanders it on vanity. Rostam, who kills his son and then his protege and dies in a family trap. Bijan, who is imprisoned in a pit in Turan for years because he crossed the border for a woman. Give, who is loyal to the point of self-annihilation. These are not paragons. They are people inside a moral universe that makes demands of them. They sometimes meet and sometimes fail. Their greatness is real. Their failures are real. The tradition holds both simultaneously because it knows, it has always known, that the war between light and darkness is not fought by pure light against pure darkness. It is fought by complicated people who are trying. I need to pause here, genuinely. There is a problem with the middle of this story that I have been moving around, and it is time to face it. The problem is this: the war between Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu as the cosmological frame is one of the most intellectually satisfying structures in the history of human religious thought. It is clear, it is motivated, it accounts for everything. It promises resolution, but the human stories inside it, Siavash, Rostam, Feridun and his sons, are not clear. They are not resolved by the cosmic frame. They are, in some ways, made more painful by it. If the universe is in fact ordered toward ultimate good, if the Frashokareti is genuinely coming, if every soul will be restored and every wrong will be righted, what do we do with the grief of Feridun holding his dead son's head? What do we do with Rostam in the pit? The cosmic promise does not reach back into the individual tragedy and make it less. I think this is intentional. I think the tradition knows this, even if it does not say it directly. The individual tragedies are preserved in their full, unreduced weight, inside a frame that promises eventual wholeness. And the friction between those two things is not a failure of the theology. It is the theology, it is the tradition saying the light is real and the darkness is real, and both are happening simultaneously, and you are inside both at once. And the comfort of the cosmic resolution does not exempt you from the particular grief of your particular moment. You still have to bury your son. You still have to stand by your father's grave and know you are the avenger of a man you never knew. You still have to let the good king walk into the snow. The story of Zarathustra himself, the prophet who receives the Mazdayasna revelation, moves through the myths like a thread that keeps surprising you by where it surfaces. He is born, in some accounts, in the northwest of Iran, in the foothills of what is now Azerbaijan. He is born with a laugh, and this detail, like Rostam's laugh, like the return of this particular detail in the tradition, says something about what the tradition values. The first breath that enters the world as joy, as recognition, as the opposite of the cry. His enemies, the forces of darkness, try to kill him from the moment of his birth. They fail, because the child who laughs at birth is protected by something that the ordinary dangers of the world cannot reach. He receives his revelation at 30, the canonical age, repeated across prophetic traditions in ways that suggest either genuine pattern or genuine borrowing, or both, and his first convert is his own cousin. For 10 years he wanders and preaches and converts almost no one. This is given to us plainly, without apology. The prophet of truth spends a decade failing to persuade people of truth. It is worth sitting with this. The tradition does not retrospectively smooth over the decade of failure, does not suggest it was secretly a success. It was failure. Truth is hard to hear. It has always been hard to hear. His breakthrough comes when he reaches the court of King Vishtaspa, K. Goshtasp, in the legendary accounts, and convinces the king's favorite horse, which has been mysteriously paralyzed, to recover. This is the miracle that opens the king's mind. Zarathustra reveals the horse's condition, leg by leg, in exchange for royal promises. The first leg for the king's conversion, the second for the crown prince's support, the third for the queen's faith, the fourth for the arrest and exile of his enemies at court. He bargains. The prophet of truth bargains for the conditions under which truth can be heard. This is the tradition's most politically unsentimental moment. Revelation requires political infrastructure, and political infrastructure requires negotiation. With Vishtaspa's support, the faith spreads. Wars are fought in its defense. The tradition records these wars as holy wars, the first holy wars in recorded religious history, which is a claim that historians debate, but which the tradition itself asserts. And this is where the Zoroastrian tradition becomes a template rather than just a story. The idea that there is a correct cosmic alignment, that right and wrong are objective features of the universe, that the war between truth and the lie is something a human society can take a side in through its laws and its governance and its daily practice. This idea does not die with the Persian Empire. It runs under everything. The Achaemenid kings, Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, rule an empire that stretches from the Aegean to the Indus, and they govern it under Ahura Mazda's name. The royal inscriptions say it repeatedly: Ahura Mazda is great. By the will of Ahura Mazda, this is my kingdom. They do not persecute the faiths of the peoples they conquer. This is also, the tradition argues, a Mazdean principle. The Druj is not defeated by compulsion, but by righteous choice, and you cannot compel righteous choice. You can only create the conditions under which it becomes possible. The Parthians after them, the Sasanians after them. Each dynasty carries the Zoroastrian frame in different degrees of orthodoxy, with different levels of priestly involvement, with the varying pressures of Hellenism and Buddhism, and eventually Islam pressing on the edges. The Arab conquest of Iran in the 7th century CE is the single greatest external rupture in the tradition's history. It brings not just political defeat, but the real possibility that the faith itself will be extinguished, that the sacred fires will be put out one by one until none remain. They are not extinguished. The community that survives, that carries the texts, the liturgy, the fire, retreats first to the mountains of Iran, and then a significant portion of them to India, where they become the Parsis. They take their sacred fires with them on the ships. The fires that are burning in the Parsi ageries of Mumbai and Pune today are kindled from flames whose continuous history stretches back to the Sasanian period, and, in tradition, much further. The fire that Hushang discovered by striking stone on stone in the mythological First Age is not a metaphor in the Zoroastrian community. It is a continuous fact. It is still burning. The tradition has survived, in other words, by being exactly what it preaches, persistent, unextinguished, carrying the light forward through every darkness that history has tried to impose on it. The community's survival is its own longest argument. What is strange about encountering the Persian mythological tradition as someone formed by different stories, and here something almost surfaces, some recognition of how the dichotomy of absolute good against absolute evil has burrowed into modern moral imagination in ways that we are still sorting out, ways that are not always comfortable, ways that perhaps needed a longer conversation than any one mythology can provide. What is strange is how familiar and how alien it is. Familiar because the war between light and darkness is the story that underlies everything from the simplest fairy tale to the most sophisticated theological argument. Because Zoroastrian ideas ran through the intellectual bloodstream of late antiquity and shaped Judaism and Christianity and Islam in ways that scholars are still mapping. Alien, because the specific Persian texture of it, the royal glory that flies away, the blacksmith's apron that becomes a battle standard, the river of molten metal that purifies even the damned, is unmistakably itself. It does not translate into something else. It remains Persian. The simurgh, the great bird of paradise, the one who nests on the tree of knowledge at the center of the world, who has lived so long that it has seen the world destroyed and rebuilt 3 times, who has watched the seeds of every plant fall into the water and every species of animal live and die. The simurgh appears when it is needed, leaves a feather that can be burned to summon it, and disappears again into the altitude of its own ancient perspective. It is the tradition's image of wisdom that exists outside the war, that is not fighting for either side, but is available to those who need it, that survived the first age and will survive the last. It midwives Rostam. It tells him how to kill Esfandiar. It raises Zal, Rostam's father, who is born with white hair and is abandoned by his terrified family in the mountains and found by the great bird and kept warm under its wing. The simurgh is, and this is the tutturamamış benzetme I have been carrying around for a while, the metaphor that does not quite settle. The simurgh is something like the sum of all wisdom that falls outside the categories of any given moment's conflict. It is like the part of you that knows both sides are right and wrong simultaneously and cannot say so to either side because they are busy fighting and would not hear it. It is like history itself when history is being generous. This does not quite work, and I know it. Let it stand. The Yazata Mithra, the guardian of covenants, the lord of contracts, the one who watches over every promise made between any 2 people anywhere in the world, survives the Zoroastrian period and enters the Roman world as Mithras, the mystery religion that spreads through the legions of the empire, the soldier's faith, the faith of men who are far from home and need something that holds. The scholars argue about the transmission, how much of Roman Mithras comes from Iranian Mithra and how much is invented by the mystery religion's initiators. But the core, the covenant, the keeping of the covenant, The idea that the universe notices and cares when you keep your word. This core is Persian, and it runs through Western history in ways we call by other names. The Faravahar, the winged disk with the human figure at its center, the symbol that appears on Achaemenid monuments and is now the most recognizable symbol of Zoroastrianism, is interpreted variously. It is the Kvarana, the royal glory, given visual form. It is the guardian spirit, the Fravashi, that every person has as a kind of ideal higher self. It is the divine in contact with the human, wings to move between realms, a ring, the same ring with which Hushang first dug the foundations of civilization, representing the eternal covenant. The human figure at the center reaches toward the ring with one hand. The other hand is raised, open. Whether it is a gesture of greeting or of offer or of protection, the tradition does not say. All three, perhaps. All three at once. In the Frashokareti, the final renovation, every person who has ever lived will be restored to bodily life. Every wrong will be righted. The river of molten metal will flow from the mountains, and every soul will walk through it. For the righteous, it will feel like warm milk. For the sinful, like burning. But it will not destroy even the sinful. It will purify. The punishment of hell is not eternal in the Zoroastrian vision. It is finite, and it is transformative. Even the most persistent servant of the lie will eventually be cleansed and return to the light. Even Angra Mainyu, some texts say, will cease, not punished, but simply deprived of the lie that constitutes him, which amounts to the same thing. This is a radical mercy. It is a mercy that exists inside an absolute ethical seriousness. The tradition is not soft on the lie, does not minimize the damage that Angra Mainyu and the Devas have done, does not pretend that suffering is not real or that wrong choices do not have real costs. But at the end of everything, the mercy, the renovation, the restoration, Ahura Mazda, who saw the whole arc of history before he created anything and chose to proceed anyway, has been waiting for this moment from the beginning. The heroes, Siavash and Feridun and Kay Khosrow and Rostam, are not just stories. They are the evidence, repeated and varied and complicated across generations, that in the long war between light and darkness, individual lives matter, individual choices shape the arc. The mother who hides the sacred child in the mountains, the blacksmith who tears the document of legitimacy apart in the street, the prince who rides through fire and comes out the other side untouched, the hero who will not come in chains. Every one of these acts is a ripple in the great movement toward renovation. None of them alone is sufficient. All of them together are the process. The tradition knows it is long. It has always been long. The fire burns. It has been burning since Hushang struck stone on stone and saw the first spark. It is burning now in the temples of Mumbai and Pune and Yazd, in the ceremonies carried across generations of a community that has been trying to extinguish its own grief and has chosen instead to carry the light forward. The texts are being studied, the gathas are being sung. The Avestan language, which is so old that linguists trace it to the same root as the Sanskrit of the Vedas, which is to say, it comes from the deepest stratum of the Indo-European speaking world. Before the migrations, before the separations, before the millennia of divergence, this language is being spoken by human mouths in the 21st century in acts of liturgy that have more continuity than almost anything else in the world of human practice. The archetypes do not die. Siavash is every person who has been falsely accused and survived the accusation with their integrity intact, and every person who has not survived it, and every person who walked into the fire, trusting that truth is its own protection. Feridun is every leader who inherits a world wounded by tyranny and does not become the tyrant in the process of ending the tyranny, and the tradition's unsentimental acknowledgement that such leaders still make terrible mistakes with their children. Rostam is the protector who outlives his protection, who keeps going anyway, who dies in a pit and still makes the last shot count. And Angra Mainyu is every lie you have told yourself about why the wrong thing was necessary, every system that feeds on the young to sustain the old, every court that signs documents attesting to the justice of the unjust king. The tradition gives Angra Mainyu a face and a name and a mythology, not because evil deserves that dignity, but because unnamed things are harder to fight than named ones. You cannot ride a demon you cannot see. You cannot extract wisdom from what you refuse to face. The light is real, the darkness is real, and the war is not over. Good night, wherever you are listening from. Good night, you in the apartment with the rain. Good night, you on the hillside with the stars. The fire is still burning. Go tend yours.